This week we're going to be looking at the virtue courage or courageous. All right. When we look at courage or courageous, it's the ability to do something that you know is difficult or dangerous. You know, and it's the mental or moral strength to venture and persevere and withstand the danger or the fear of it or the difficulty. Now, if we look at in the Old Testament, when Moses was about to die and he was going to pass the torch over to Joshua to become the leader of the children of Israel, Moses was about 120 years old. You know, Moses knew what God was going to expect of the children of Israel. They were supposed to go into the promised land and take the promised land and move out all of the people who did not believe in the true God and have wars against them. And here's Israel. They're thinking, wow, and now Moses, our leader, is going to be gone, and he's turning the reins over to Joshua. And so this is what Moses said to the people. Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God will go with you, and he will never leave you or forsake you. You know, Mark Twain says, courage is the resistance to fear, the mastery of fear. It's not the absence of fear. He said, or John Wayne, I like his. He says, courage is being afraid and saddling up anyway. If we go way back to Aristotle, Aristotle really valued courage. He said it was the first of all human qualities because it's the quality which guarantees all the others. So in other words, if you don't have courage, all these other virtues and qualities probably aren't going to come to be. And C.S. Lewis also said basically the same thing. Courage is not simply one of the virtues, but it is a form of every virtue at its testing point. For without courage, you probably aren't going to follow through with any of these other virtues. Let's take a look at Gideon in the Old Testament. Now, he really wasn't a man of courage. And this happened way before King Saul, King David, King Solomon, the golden years of Israel. This is still in the time when they had the judges. A famous judge was Samson, the big strong guy. But here's Gideon. And God comes to Gideon and has to really convince him that he's the man to lead Israel against the Midianites. Now the Midianites had caused all types of problems. They were coming in and always raiding and destroying all the crops and everything. And so now God finally convinces Gideon to say, okay, all right, I'll lead the children of Israel. And he looks at the big mass of humanity that Midian has, all the soldiers and everything, and he equated it to they were as thick as locusts that you see here in the screen, And then Gideon's kind of going, wow, I don't know whether I can do this or not, God. And God says, well, let's go down and scout the Midianite camp out. And sure enough, in the evening, when they were scouting it out, and he was listening, he could hear one of the soldiers who had woken up from a sleep, who had a dream. And in that dream, this soldier was saying, Gideon is going to come and attack us, and he is going to win. Well, when Gideon heard that, he went ahead and said, well, now I've got some courage. I'm going to go back and I'm going to recruit all of Israel. And sure enough, he recruited a lot of them. He had over 32,000 of those 12 tribes that were willing to fight the Midianites. And God said, Gideon, that's too many. They're going to think they defeated the Midianites. I want them to know, and the Midianites to know, that I am behind this. So Gideon says to the people, the 32,000, if any of you really don't want to and you're kind of afraid, it's no problem. You can go home. And 22,000 went home. But that left 10,000. God says, that's still too many. That's still too many. You know, I want people to know that I'm behind this and it wasn't them. And so he says, well, what am I supposed to do? He says, take them down to the place where they're going to get some water to drink. And sure enough, only 300, you know, they were so afraid that they bent down on their knees real quick and lapped up the water like a dog. And God says, that's a bunch. So when you look at it, they were too afraid, first of all, when he told the rest of the people they could leave, to leave. And secondly, when they were drinking, they were lapping it up in fear. They were so afraid. You know, now that's Gideon's army, 300, against this massive amount of humanity. And what were the weapons that God told Gideon to use? They're kind of strange. 300 trumpets, 300 water pitchers, and 300 torches concealed in the water pitcher. You say, what in the world's going to happen? Now, what's the strategy behind all this? Well, Gideon was supposed to take, you know, the 300, divide them up into 3 groups of 100, and they would surround the camp. All right? Now, they would attack them in the evening while they're sleeping. They would first of all blow their 300 trumpets as a call to battle. And then they would break the pitchers as it was the sound to simulate the clashing of arms and swords and everything, kind of bouncing back and forth like there was a whole bunch of people there to fight. And then they would shout, for the Lord and for Gideon. And they surround the camp then with those 300 torches. Now that sounds like quite a dumb strategy to me. But you had to understand that one trumpet and one torch was an indication in those days that there was a group of 100 men. One torch and one trumpet. So if a trumpet blew, they had groups of 100. All right? And so the Midianites, when they saw the 300 torches and heard the 300 trumpets, they assumed that it wasn't 300 men, but it was 30,000 men coming down on their camp. And the invaders all didn't speak the same language. The Midianites had 3 different dialects, so they couldn't even always communicate real well with one another. And when the attack started, they became confused. And since it was dark, they came out of their tents and they started fighting one another. And the enemy defeated itself, and fighting one another. All right, so Gideon was victorious, or was he? He became courageous because he knew that he was going to win the battle, because God permitted him to win the battle. Things at times are not always that clear. You know, I took a movie called Blindside, and it's where Michael Oher was faced with a challenge in high school that his grades were not all that good. And he had to pass this history class to make him eligible that he could be recruited in college. And so we start with a scene of where where they find out that he doesn't have a good grade.
Ford. I don't know what your problem is.
I'm sorry. I will not give the student a grade he or she doesn't deserve.
Well, Michael needs a B. What does he have to do to deserve that?
Right now, Michael's doing C minus, 50+ work. His best chance of improvement is the written essay at the end of the year. Counts for a third of the grade.
Well, that's it. We're sunk.
Why don't you write about great expectations? You're a lot like Pip. I mean, he was poor, he was an orphan, and someone kind of found him. You should be able to relate to that. Fine. Go through the reading list. But you're gonna have to pick one, Michael. Pygmalion. A Tale of Two Cities. The Charge of the Light Brigade.
Half a league. Half a league. Half a league off. I love that.
He loves it. Why don't you do this, and I'll watch basketball.
Okay. All in the Valley of Death, Road to 600. They named LSU Stadium Death Valley because of this story. Alfred Mortensen was writing about LSU Ole Miss. Kidding? No, it's a great story.
It's a poem.
Forward the Light Brigade. It's like the offense. Charge for the guns, he said. It's the end zone. Into the Valley of Death, Road to 600. Forward the Light Brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered.
Someone made a mistake?
Yeah, their leader. Their coach.
But why would they go ahead if they knew he messed up?
Theirs not to make reply. Theirs not to reason why. Theirs but to do and die. Into the Valley of Death, Road to 600.
They're all gonna die, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's really, really sad.
I think you just found something to write about, Michael.
Courage is a hard thing to figure. You can have courage based on a dumb idea or a mistake, but you're not supposed to question adults or your coach or your teacher because they make the rules. Maybe they know best, but maybe they don't. It all depends on who you are, where you come from. Didn't at least one of the 600 guys think about giving up and joining with the other side? I mean, Valley of Death, that's pretty salty stuff. That's why courage is tricky. Should you always do what others tell you to do? Sometimes you might not even know why you're doing something. I mean, any fool can have courage. But honor, that's the real reason you either do something or you don't. It's who you are, and maybe who you want to be. If you die trying for something important, then you have both honor and courage. And that's pretty good. I think that's what the writer was saying, that you should hope for courage and try for honor. And maybe even pray that the people telling you what to do have some too.
Kevin Lynn.
Well, obviously, Michael in the movie passed the class and was recruited and played at Ole Miss. Courage, Billy Graham says, is contagious. When a brave man takes a stand, the spines of others are often stiffened. Just one person. Green made a statement like this: a single feat of daring can alter the whole conception of what is possible. So what we need is to be courageous in everything we do.